Hey, in this lesson, we are looking at all 12 grammar tenses in English. Now, tenses are super important because they help us to understand when an action or an event is actually happening. And learning grammar tenses in English can be a little bit confusing sometimes. So looking at them side by side or comparing them is a nice way to help you understand the difference between them. As well, whenever you're learning grammar tenses in English, it's very important to learn three main things. First of all, when to use this tense. Second of all, how to form it or the structure. And third, some common examples that you can actually use in your everyday life. So in this lesson, we're first going to be looking at the present tenses in English, then the past tenses, and finally the future forms or future tenses, all right? Now there is going to be a lot of information in today's lesson, so to help you navigate through the lesson, I will leave timestamps down below so you can jump around and maybe review any of the tenses that might be a little bit more tricky or new for you, okay? As well, you can read notes on today's lesson in the blog post that goes along with this lesson, and I will link the blog post down below for you. There will also be some more examples in the blog post, so I highly recommend that you check it out after this lesson as well, okay? So let's get started. So our first tense is also the most commonly used in spoken English, and that is the present simple tense. So when do we use the present simple tense? We use it to talk about facts, things that are generally true, habits or routines, to share our opinions, and also to talk about future scheduled events. And the present simple tense is pretty easy to form. We just use the subject and the base form of the verb. Now, if your subject is I, we, you, or they, your base form of the verb doesn't change. But if your subject is he, she, or it, you need to add an S when you are forming the present simple. So for example, I work in Dubai. So here we don't need an S. He works in Dubai. She works in Dubai. Okay, so whenever you have the subject he, she, or it, remember to add an S with the present simple tense. And the most common verb in the present simple tense is the verb to be. So the verb to be in the present simple is I am, he is, she is, it is, we are, or they are, okay? You also have the verb to have. So have in present simple also changes depending on the subject, okay? So I, we, you, or they have, he, she, it has, all right? So for example, I have a dog, she has a dog. So just keep these two verbs in mind, verb to be and the verb to have. Okay, so now some common examples of the present simple tense. Remember that we use the present simple tense for things that are generally true, okay? So I am a teacher. I live in Dubai. I work in Dubai. I don't have any pets. Dubai is pretty expensive, but I think it's a great place to live, all right? So in these examples, I've given you some facts, some general truths, some opinions. So again, the present simple tense, we use it for facts, things that are generally true, habits or routines, opinions, and scheduled future events, all right? So try to describe your own life or your own situation using the present simple tense, and you can leave that down in the comments below. Okay, so next we have the present continuous tense. So when do we use the present continuous? We use this one to talk about things that are happening right now at this moment, things that are happening during this period of time, temporary situations, and future plans that we make. And to form the present continuous, we have the subject plus verb to be and a verb with ing, okay? So what changes here is actually the verb to be depending on your subject. So for example, I am working, he is working, she is working, it is working, we are working, they are working, all right? So the verb is always working with ing, but we change our verb to be to match the subject. Now, some common examples. One of the most common ways to use the present continuous is when you call someone up and you ask them, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? So, I am recording this lesson on the 12 English tenses for you. I am filming a lesson right now, okay? Another example. Are you watching anything good on Netflix? So in this example, I'm not asking you at this very second. I'm asking you during this period, basically these days, during this time, are you watching anything? So right now, I am not watching anything on Netflix. I am looking for something good to watch. So if you have any suggestions, let me know, okay? An example of a temporary situation. Imagine you're getting your house renovated or painted. You could say, I am staying with a friend or I'm staying at a hotel because I'm having my house painted, okay? And an example of future plans. Tonight, I am meeting friends for dinner. Or tonight, I'm going shopping. Or tonight, I am making pizza for dinner. Now, one thing to note about the present continuous tense is that generally for continuous tenses, we don't use stative verbs. Now, stative verbs are things like prefer, believe, love, and hate. So these are verbs that we cannot see people doing. Action verbs are actions that we can see, like run, swim, drive, cook. We can see these things, but you cannot see prefer. You cannot see believe. You cannot see love or hate, right? So generally, we don't make stative verbs continuous, but there's a special exception with the present continuous. In conversational English, we sometimes say, I'm loving something or I'm hating something. So for example, if you say, I'm hating this song, maybe there's a song that you hear on the radio all the time and it's annoying, okay? Or you can say, I'm loving this song. So I'm loving this song or I'm hating this song. It just means I like it or I don't like it. So that's an important one to keep in mind. You might hear native English speakers using this. You might see it on TV, and this is totally acceptable. It's an exception to the grammatical rule. Okay, next we have the present perfect simple tense, the present perfect simple tense. So when do we use the present perfect simple? We use this one to talk about actions that started in the past and are still true or still happening or have some connection or relevance to the present, okay? We also use the present perfect simple to talk about or to ask about life experiences or general experiences without a specific time or a specific date, all right? So experiences that happened sometime in our life, but we are not specifying the date or the time when these things happened. Now, to form the present perfect simple tense, we need our subject plus have or has, depending on the subject, and past participle, which is sometimes called verb 3, okay? So past participle, for example, if we look at the verb go, went, gone is verb 3. Gone is your past participle. So go, went, gone. Another example, eat, ate in the past. Eaten is verb 3, all right? So that's how we form the present perfect tense. Now, some common examples using the present perfect simple. How long have you lived in Dubai? How long have you worked for this company, okay? I've lived in Dubai for 5 years. I have worked for this company for 10 years. These are examples of things that started in the past and are still true or still happening. Like, how long have you been married? They have been married for 10 years, okay? We also use it to talk about life experiences or to ask about life experiences. For example, Have you ever been to Canada? Have you ever been skydiving? You could say, I've never been to Canada, or I've been to Canada many times, or I've never been skydiving, or yes, I've been skydiving once. Okay, so again, life experiences or things that started before and are still true or still happening. Okay, next we have the present perfect continuous tense. Now, when do we use the present perfect continuous? This one we use to talk about new or temporary habits or routines, to talk about how long something has been happening, or an ongoing action that has caused a present result. And here we often use so or because. And to form the present perfect continuous tense, we use our subject, have or has been, and a verb with ing. So some common examples. I've been waking up early lately, or I've been trying to wake up early. She's been looking for a new job for the past 6 months, or she's been looking for an apartment for the past 2 months. He's been working outside all day, so he's exhausted. All right. So in this last example, we're looking at the present result. The present result is he's exhausted because he has been working outside all day. Okay. So next we're going to move on to the past tenses, and the most common past tense is the past simple tense. And when do we use this one? We use it to talk about things or events or actions that are finished, things that are in the past, they're done. And with the past simple tense, you can use specific dates or specific times as well if you like. Now, the form of the past simple tense is pretty easy. We have our subject and a past tense verb. The tricky thing is we also have irregular verbs in English. So regular past tense verbs, we just add ed. For example, the verb work becomes worked in the past simple tense. The verb cook becomes cooked in the past simple tense. So verbs with ed, these are regular verbs. But we have lots and lots and lots of irregular verbs. And with irregular verbs, you actually have to change the verb to make it past tense. So for example, go becomes went. Drive becomes drove. Write becomes wrote. Now, with irregular verbs, you do just have to memorize them and learn them over time, all right? But I would start off with learning common past tense irregular verbs first. Another thing to keep in mind with the past simple tense is past simple questions. When we are asking past simple questions, we usually use did plus the base form of the verb, okay? So for example, did you work yesterday? This question is correct. Did tells us that this is a past tense question, but we keep the main verb work as a base verb. So did you work yesterday? Not did you worked yesterday, all right? So remember that with did questions, did is what's telling us that the question is past, and the main verb, we keep the base form of that verb. Okay, now some common examples of the past simple tense. What did you do yesterday? What did you do yesterday? What did you have for dinner last night? Okay. Where did you go on the weekend? I went shopping. I met up with friends. How did you get to work today? I drove to work today, or I walked to work today. All right. So the past simple tense, again, super, super common for asking people questions, for telling stories, for talking about anything that happened before this moment. So our next past tense is the past continuous tense. So when do we use the past continuous? We use this one to talk about an action that is overlapping another past action, to give some background information when we're telling a story, or to emphasize that something was happening or going on for a long time in the past. And we form the past continuous tense with our subject, was or were, again depending on the subject, and a verb with ing. So, some common examples. If I am telling a story, I can say it was a beautiful day and the sun was shining, or it was pouring rain, okay? Another very common example is when we have an overlapping past event and then another event. So for example, I was driving when you called me, so I couldn't pick up. Or to emphasize that something was happening for a long time. For example, she was talking and talking and talking, and the story was super boring. I couldn't even follow what she was saying. Okay, next we have the past perfect tense. So when do we use the past perfect tense? We use the past perfect tense to talk about a past action that happened before another past action, all right? So imagine that we have two actions that happened in the past. The earlier one, or the first one, is usually in past perfect, and the second one, or the later one, is usually in past simple. And we form the past perfect with our subject plus had. We always use had, and a past participle, or the third verb. And some common examples. We had just finished lunch when she arrived. So we finished lunch first and she arrived second, but both of these things were in the past. I had just graduated when I got the job. So I graduated first and I got the job second. And one more example, I had already made plans when you invited me. So I already made my plans first and then you invited me second. Our next past tense is the past perfect continuous tense. So we use the past perfect continuous to talk about an action that was ongoing or happening up until another thing started. Or to talk about something that was ongoing or happening and finished just before another thing started or another action started. And we form the past perfect continuous with our subject, had been, and a verb with ing. So some common examples. They had been dating for 1 year when they moved in together. They had been dating for 1 year when they moved in together. So this action of dating was ongoing, and then the next thing happened, they moved in together. Another example, the kids had been playing outside all day, so they fell asleep right away. So the ongoing action in the past was the kids were playing all day, and that action finished. They came inside and they fell asleep immediately. So there was an ongoing action that finished, and then the next action happened, the kids fell asleep. So that's it for the past tenses. Now we're going to move on to the future. And we're going to start off by talking about will. A lot of times when English learners think about the future, or talk about the future, they just use will. But the reality is that we don't actually use will to talk about what we are doing in the future or our future plans. We do use will to talk about promises and offers that we make for the future, spontaneous decisions that we make at the second we are talking, but of course for the future, and to make predictions or guesses about what we think is going to happen in the future, but we don't really have any evidence or proof, okay? So we actually use will for these three reasons most often, okay? Promises or offers, spontaneous decisions, and predictions about the future without any evidence. And the form is, of course, subject, will, and your base verb. Remember that after will, you never ever use to, okay? With other modals as well, you never use to. So it's will and a base verb. So some common examples of offers or promises. I will pick you up from the airport. I will pick you up from the airport. Or I will call you back as soon as I can. This is a promise. I'll call you back as soon as I can. Or I will be there. This is a promise as well, okay? So anytime you offer to help someone or you make someone a promise, you don't need to say I promise, but you can just use will. Some examples of spontaneous decisions. Imagine that you are eating in a restaurant and you're about to order your meal, okay? So you get your menu, you look at your menu, and you make a spontaneous decision about what you're gonna have. You probably didn't think about it a week in advance or a month in advance. Usually you get to the restaurant, you open up the menu, and you make a spontaneous decision. So you can say, I will have pizza, please. I'll have pizza. So when you're ordering at a restaurant, you can say, I'll have, okay? Another example of a spontaneous decision is if the doorbell rings. If the doorbell rings, I'm not expecting it to ring, and I offer to answer the door, I can say, I will get it. I will get the door, or I will get it, okay? If your phone rings and you can't answer it, you can say, I will call back later. This is again a spontaneous decision. Now, some examples of predictions about the future, but we don't really have evidence. When you say to someone, everything will be okay, or you will do a great job, or you will get the job if they have a job interview. These are all examples of predictions that we're making or guesses that we're making, but we don't really have any evidence. Another example, if I have a 2 or 3-year-old child who loves to sing and I say she will grow up to be a famous singer, this is a prediction or a guess with no real evidence or no real proof. She's only 2 or 3. I don't know what she's going to become, all right? So this is how we use will. Again, note that we don't really use will to talk about what we are doing later. So we don't say, I will go shopping tonight. I will meet friends tonight. This is quite unnatural. Instead, we use going to, and as I mentioned, the present continuous. So you could say, I am going to meet friends tonight, or I'm going shopping tonight. Now, I do have a full lesson just on the future forms, and I will link that lesson down below for you. So make sure you check that one out if you want to learn more about how to use future forms naturally in your conversations. Okay, next we have the future continuous tense, the future continuous tense. And the future continuous tense is used to talk about actions that will be ongoing or will be happening at some time in the future. And we form this tense with our subject, will be, and a verb with ing. So some common examples for you. The government will be announcing the new policy later on this month. The government will be announcing the new policy later on this month. So in this example, they will be making some announcements, probably more than one. So this event will be ongoing, and we don't really know how long it's going to continue, but we know it's going to be happening for some time in the future. Another example, our team will be working on this project over the next few months. Our team will be working on this project over the next few months. So again, our work on the project will be ongoing. This will continue into the future. And one more example, I will be creating lots of new lessons for you this coming year. I will be creating lots of new lessons on lots of new topics for you. Next, we have the future perfect tense, the future perfect tense. Now, the future perfect tense is used to talk about an event that will be completed or finished by a specific time in the future, okay? And we form the future perfect tense with our subject, will, have, and a past participle or verb 3, okay? So, for example, it's January now, the first month in the year when I'm making this lesson for you. So imagine if you save $100 every single month, okay? You will have saved $1,200 by the end of the year. So you save $100 every month for 12 months. You can say, I will have saved $1,200 by the end of the year. Okay, so another example, by the end of this lesson, you will have learned about all of the tenses in English. All right, so again, this is to talk about something that will be completed by a certain point. So by the end of the lesson, that's a specific point. You will have learned about all of the tenses in English. And finally, we have the future perfect continuous tense. And we use the future perfect continuous to talk about events that will be happening or will be continuing up until a certain point or a specific point in the future. Now, this tense is not very common, honestly, in conversation. I almost never use it, but it is good to just have an understanding of it. So if you see it, or if you hear it, or if you read it, you at least understand the timeline for those events. So again, it's not the most common tense, so don't stress too much about this one, or the future perfect, all right? So we form the future perfect continuous with our subject, will have been, and a verb with ing. So subject, will have been, and a verb with ing. So for example, I will have been living in Dubai for 5 years next month. Okay, so by the time next month arrives, I will have been living in Dubai. This event would have been continuing until a certain point next month. All right, so again, not the most common tense, so don't stress too much about this one. So there you have it. These are your 12 tenses in English: present, past, and future. Now, the purpose of today's lesson is to give you an overview of all of these tenses and to help you understand when to use them and how to use them in a natural way. There was a lot of information in today's lesson, so feel free to review the lesson at any point in time, pause, make some notes, read the blog, use the timestamps, and come back to this lesson whenever you are struggling with one or more of these English tenses, all right? Now, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments. Feel free to leave some examples for practice as well. And don't forget to grab your free ebook, English Conversations Made Simple. I've written this ebook to help you speak naturally and confidently in English conversations. It's free. Just click the link below this lesson to get your copy. As always, thank you so much for learning with me and for spending time with me today. And I will see you very soon in the next lesson.